Hello everyone and welcome to Topic A here on WYLN TV. I'm Gary Chrin, and today I'm very pleased to have with me John Chrin, who is running in the 8th Congressional District to be your representative in Congress. He is facing off against Matt Cartwright. First of all, John, thanks so much for coming on.
Gary, great to be here.
So first of all, give us a little bit of a background of John Chrin, what you have done and what led you to this road to run for Congress.
Sure. So Gary, I am 10th generation Pennsylvanian, grandson of a coal miner, a steel worker, born, raised, and educated in Bethlehem and Easton. Went through the Bethlehem public schools, then graduated from Easton Area High School. First person in my family to go to college. I was fortunate to get scholarships and pay for school to go to Lehigh University. Got an opportunity to get an economics degree, an industrial engineering degree. And then I went to New York and went to graduate school at Columbia University, where I graduated with an MBA in finance. And as I think about my background, you know, educational degrees are terrific, but the thing I'm most proud of are the values that I learned in Pennsylvania growing up here from my parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and the common sense that was just embedded in me from an early age. So that's my background. Had a terrific business career, traveled the country, worked with companies expanding their businesses, creating jobs, investing over the last 10 years, again with entrepreneurs, new companies, to try to build and create industries and jobs, which is what I've done. And that's what I'm back home now, and I want to bring more prosperity to Northeast Pennsylvania.
We've seen in the last few election cycles a lot more everyday people, working class people, people who've gone out and worked in businesses, started businesses, decide to run for office. You fit in that because you've seen kind of how things aren't working too well in Washington. So was that a big drive for you to say, you know, listen, we got to clean this up?
It was a contributory factor, and you know, you're right. I am an outsider. I've never done anything in politics before. This is the first run in public elected office that I've made. And it's something where I looked and I said, you know what, we can do better. We should have more people that are representative of the American fabric, the beautiful mosaic of people that we have in this country. And I would humbly argue that we have enough lawyers in Washington and not enough people that have an engineering background the way I do, that have a banking background, that have an accountancy background, and that coupled with common sense can do so much better for the country. And I worry about where we're headed. I think we've made great strides over the last couple of years. We see that reflected in the economy, better jobs, wages starting to rise, and it's a good thing. But I wanted to get involved, again, to come back and give back to the place that I call home.
And that leads me to my next question. Your opponent says in a campaign ad that's running that you live in New Jersey, and that's where you and your wife are at. But that's not true.
Yep, it's not. So one of the things that I do at this point is I'll be out and people will say, John, where do you live? So I love to take out my driver's license and the concealed carry permit that I have. I live in Barrett Township, Monroe County, period. And it would be a great story were it true, but it's not. But that's the way politics works, and it's just amazing that people make claims about individuals which they just blatantly know are false.
And I know in recent weeks there have been articles in the newspaper all about this. You've come out and said, live in Barrett Township, this is where I'm at, show everything, and that you and your wife reside there. Now,
to be clear, so I live there, and my wife and my youngest daughter still live in New Jersey. Part of what happened over the last several years as I thought about this is conversation with my wife about would it be appropriate for me to take this jump, get involved in politics, and give back. My youngest daughter is a senior in high school. She will finish out her senior year of high school, where she's gone for her entire life. I would be a bad dad, okay, in my view, if I said, you need to leave school just so that I could pursue giving back to the community that made me. So they live there, I live in Pennsylvania.
Okay. All right. That's good to clear up, so we have that out there, so we get all the rumors taken care of right off the bat. Your opponent also alleges that you're going to cut Social Security if you get to Washington, D.C. Tell us a little bit about that. Is that your plan? Do you plan on going to D.C. to cut Social Security?
No. Okay. And again, fabrications. I was tracked in a meeting for an hour where they videotaped me, and the question was asked, would I cut Social Security? The answer was no. No. And what I said was that we need to make sure the system stays strong. And a couple of the ways you do that are by making sure we have more people work, making sure that any fraud in the system is taken out. And then, as I often do, I speak too much, and I pointed out that in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, in that legislation which was passed, that did include a change to the Consumer Price Index, which was utilized to figure out increases around Social Security increases that could result in the index being down a couple tenths of a percent. It's not what I want to do. That was past legislation. What I want to do is actually make sure we protect Social Security. It's a promise that we've made to people that have paid into the system, which we need to make sure we honor. And by the way, one of the things beyond the engineering, accounting, and finance background, I would be the first person ever elected to Congress that has what's called a Certified Financial Planner designation, CFP designation. And you think about that in terms of the ability to look at individual financial situations. It would actually be a good thing, wouldn't you think, to have somebody like that in Washington to comprehensively think about the average person and how they should handle their life financially?
That would be a good thing, because I think a lot of times we're kind of told how it's going to be, and nobody really understands the true effect of how it's going to affect everyday citizens across the country. Absolutely. I want to go on and talk to you a little bit about sanctuary cities. That has become kind of a big part of this campaign. You are a strong opponent of sanctuary cities.
Correct.
You've said that from the beginning. There are ads running that show your opponent's not so strong stance on sanctuary cities, next to none, really. Why do you think, and why in your campaign, do you think sanctuary cities are a bad move for us, and why they need to be gone?
Yeah. So they're a bad move, Gary, on a whole number of levels. And look, one thing I want to be very clear. Viewers, as you watch this show, you can go to my website, www.johnchrin.com. Any claim that I make about Matt Cartwright and his voting record is on our website, the detail and the facts which back it up. I am a person of fact, I tell the truth, and there's nothing that I am saying about him that is not publicly available based on his voting record for the last 5.5 years, or his personal actions in terms of what he has done or failed to do as it relates to paying his taxes. So that is something that I want everybody to know, that I'm about the truth in terms of what is out there. So when we talk about sanctuary cities, I've traveled to Honduras 50 times in my life. My wife is from there, and if you see the risk that our country has in terms of the contraband, the weapons, the drugs, the sex trafficking, the human trafficking that takes place, we have a broken system in this country in terms of immigration. Sanctuary cities are something that you look at, and it is unbelievably disrespectful to the law enforcement agents that we have, whether it's local police, ICE, others that are involved, that we take people and they get released. We put these people at great risk, and I am sorry. I have vehemently been opposed to sanctuary cities from day one. My opponent is somebody who has consistently voted for them, until he realized that it wasn't what the people of Northeast Pennsylvania would like to have. And now he's trying to scurry back and say, maybe he's not. But he has been a major proponent of sanctuary cities. It's part of the caucus that he caucuses with. So again, it's a politician being a politician. They go to Washington, and then they like to flutter in the wind like a flag.
You have called for a debate to happen in just about every county that makes up the 8th Congressional District. So far, there has been one debate that has been confirmed and scheduled to happen. And there seems to be some pushback from Matt Cartwright's campaign on the number of debates, where they should be, who should be involved in them. Has there been any movement on that, or are we still looking at just one debate for this whole district?
Gary, what I can tell you at this point, we've had one debate agreed to. You're correct. Our campaign called out and said, this district is very new. 53% of the district is what Matt had originally, so 47% of it is new. They didn't elect him. And there are areas like Wayne County, Pike County, portions of Monroe, portions of Luzerne County, portions of Lackawanna that never voted for him. I've said we should have debates in each of the 5 counties if possible. My campaign today, September 5th, put out an announcement that we've agreed to an ask from the Wayne and Pike Chamber of Commerce to a debate. I would hope that Mr. Cartwright and his campaign also agree to that debate, because these are the things that are important, especially when we're talking about small businesses, Chamber of Commerce, where the voters ought to have a chance to come out and ask the questions that are important to them. His campaign said, we'd like to limit this and focus on just 2, 3, 4 items. Right. And I would say those are great. We can talk about those. We can moderate it with people that are meant to be independent. But it should be the voters of the 8th Congressional District who figure out what are the topics that are important to them. Because it's not what's important to us. It's what's important to them, because we work for them, okay? And we shouldn't control and dictate an artificial framework of topics.
With that, and one of the questions when I was preparing for this that I thought of was, by setting limits and saying, I want to talk about these topics, you're kind of limiting to, or maybe hiding behind the fact of something that you may not like. And you've said, we're open to debate all the topics that affect the constituents of the 8th District.
Correct. I mean, look, I am all about the truth. You go out, you find information, you figure out whether or not people are nimble on their feet, whether or not they have a good business sense, common sense, if they can think through issues that are complex and not just regurgitate sound bites in terms of what their party wants them to say and what they stand for. So I hope that the Cartwright campaign comes back and agrees to these type of debates throughout the district, because you know what? The voters deserve it. And it's interesting, not to cut you off, but when Matt ran against Tim Holden a number of years ago, he actually criticized Tim for his lack of willingness to hold debates and chastised him, saying the voters deserve it. And you know what? They do. So let's see whether or not he sticks to his word.
Kind of along the lines of debates, we are in this election year, and something that we have noticed is, do you think Matt Cartwright is playing a little bit more to the moderate field this election cycle than what he has been more on his liberal side with the voting in his record? Do you see him kind of going a little bit more to moderate because of this new district?
I think so. And I think we started to see that even before the district got redrawn. And it's, again, I look at it and I just have too much confidence in the voters of Northeast Pennsylvania, that they're very smart people. They can figure out when someone's trying to mislead them. And fortunately or unfortunately for somebody who's been in elected office, they have a track record of votes. And 5.5 years is that's a long enough time that you can look and figure out who a true person is. That's what I want to have people focus on, in terms of not what I say, what have I done? And that's where there is a history of vote after vote on sanctuary cities that Matt has supported them. And when we go through and talk about other things that are important, tax laws, regulations and rules that cripple businesses in terms of job creation and operating profitably, those are the things that I want to make sure we have an opportunity to debate and discuss. Because for the average person sitting around his or her table, they're better off. They have more money in their pocket today than they did 2 years ago. The economy is substantially better in terms of the growth that we see. And you know what? As I talk to voters, the crumbs that Nancy Pelosi and Matt Cartwright talked about, they're very happy to have at this point. And they're also very happy that the economy is doing better, so that they're working more hours, that they're getting paid more. That's what we should be focused on in terms of the good things happening around the economy. And by the way, we're also in a world that's safer. I mean, we can look at the safety, whether it's over in the Middle East, and other things that have been accomplished around the world, that as a family here, a lot of good things happening, but not enough credit being given for them.
I want to ask this question to you, being in this race for the 8th Congressional District. When you're out talking with the people who live in this district, what are some of the biggest concerns they're bringing to you and say, when elected, we need you to help with this. We need you to go and fight for us in Washington on these topics. What are they talking about?
Yeah, great question. So, it's really the 4 things that I talk about all the time, and you can have some very specific things to a family, but it's consistently. We want to make sure that the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, which was enacted, stays in place. And I can tell you one of the top priorities I would have being in Washington is making sure that those cuts, especially for the middle class taxpayers, are locked in. Because right now they're subject to a sunset provision out a few years. Those things should be locked in. Corporate rates were, let's do it for middle class people. The second thing that they talk about is making sure that the rollback of the regulations that had been onerous over the last 8 years preceding the Trump presidency don't come back into place, because rolling them back has been a great impetus to this turbocharging of the economy over the last couple of years in terms of letting Americans be Americans and being innovative, driving growth, doing good things, creating new companies, jobs, and opportunities. They also talk a lot about unaffordable, high-cost health care. I actually spent this morning at a breakfast with a number of practitioners, doctors, nurses, physicians' assistants, going through, hearing their perspective about what should take place around the Affordable Care Act. And I think that's another thing that's super important to them. They care about sanctuary cities and an immigration policy that's a positive one for the country, but it's tough. We need more people in this country. There are 750,000 agricultural jobs that are left unfilled. There are close to 1 million in terms of the construction industry. This country has thrived in part because of immigration, but it needs to be legal immigration, and we need to protect the people of this country so that we know what we're doing. I hear about the opioid crisis consistently from people as well, but that's the handful of things that as you go through, and that's what we should be talking about in terms of what are the specific type of plans that each of us can bring to bear, given our backgrounds and experiences.
Why do you think, especially now in 2018, that we're seeing, and the congressional candidates, not just you, everyone who's running in the field right now, are getting more and more questions about how government can help without overhelping? Being able to help and establish businesses and get them off the ground, but not have that overreach. And where do you think that fine line is?
Look, it's a very delicate one, and having created companies myself, whether it's a dry cleaning business that I opened in the 1990s in Nazareth, Pennsylvania, whether it's investing with startup companies that have grown to be fairly significant institutions. You don't want the government to be intrusive. You don't want them to be overbearing. You don't want them to tell you how to change a light bulb. When you look, and I talk to the farmers a lot, the Waters of the U.S. Act, very restrictive in terms of some of the things that they would do that you'd say, that makes no sense from a common sense perspective in terms of the restrictions and the cost around particular things. So when I think about what we should do, the government's principal job at the federal level is to protect us. Clearly, that's what they should do. As they try to do anything beyond that, it really should be in the context of making our lives better. So bigger government is not better. In my view, we can be smarter, we can be more efficient. And healthcare is one of those places where my opponent and I disagree quite sharply, because he thinks healthcare should be nationalized, that the federal government can be a great regulator and distributor of healthcare, and I vehemently disagree. And the group of people that I was with this morning felt the same way, that if we have something like that, we're going to wind up with fewer and fewer innovative molecules, drugs, devices that get invented, fewer people that want to get involved in medicine because of what will happen with the healthcare system. So again, I think there's tremendous opportunity for us to drive down the costs related to healthcare, for us to increase a focus on wellness and outcomes as opposed to treating problems after they've happened, and embracing technology, because there are a lot of things that are out there. I mean, for instance, this morning I found out that digitization of healthcare, which is a great thing, is terrific. The problem is we have 30 plus different programs that don't allow the digitized medical records, including those within different branches of the Army, the VA, and in the private sector, to communicate with each other. That's ridiculous. In a private company, that stuff would be streamlined. And you see, that's where if the government's going to get involved, you'd say, let's get that stuff done quickly so we can utilize the power of the data.
And I want to, on your background a little bit, having a financial background, knowing budgets inside and out, and being able to know that our spending on the federal level tends to be a little out of hand, to put it mildly. How would you go in to DC, be able to look and say, you know, guys, we're overspending in this. We're doing all this, but in the same time, and I know many people throughout in each congressional district across the country want to know how are we still going to benefit from having you in our district. So how do you play that line?
I think it's one that I can play extremely well. Again, growing up in a working class family, I know the importance of stretching a dollar. You know, my mom struggled when we were kids to pay for food when we go to the supermarket, to pay, you know, just bills. So when I think about what goes on in the government, and how money is not thought about thoughtfully, you want to have people that are good stewards of money, that know how to spend it well, think about it, how it's going to be invested in people and programs and infrastructure. Great example, you know, President Trump went over to Europe, and there was a lot of noise about his negotiating with NATO to have them pay, the European members of NATO, pay more for the defense of the European countries. And he walked away with them paying $44 billion a year incrementally towards the cost. That means our taxpayers save $44 billion. $44 billion on a present value basis in terms of the stream of money that's going to accrue to us over the next, you know, 20, 30, 40 years. And that's the equivalent of some, you know, it's $400 billion to $1 trillion of savings. So when we say we don't have enough money, it's just common sense, thinking about things. There's a great example, the $400 million that got saved on Air Force One's purchase just because of asking Boeing to reduce the price. You have to have people who have a backbone, who know how to ask the questions. And again, I would humbly say having more lawyers in Washington isn't going to get us a better outcome. That's what we've had. So more business sense, common sense, and people with the willingness to ask the tough questions and negotiate hard on behalf of the taxpayers of this country. Because you know what, if we don't, we're not going to have enough resources to pay for the things that we want to pay for our retirees, to pay for the veterans, to pay for education, to make the type of investments in technology. Those are our military. These are things that are important to the country that we can do better, but it's by being smarter and applying some common sense.
You speak of the veterans. You have a VA, right? It will be in the 8th district once it is all settled down. We've seen countless times veterans not getting the benefits they deserve, the health care they deserve, and especially right here in our area. We have a huge population of veterans, and the outcrying for not being able to get everything that they were promised and that they deserve seems to get louder. How can we fix that? How can we make sure our VA systems are working properly, and how do we make sure that they'll be taken care of?
Gary, number one, we need to take care of them. I mean, these are people that fought for, provided us the liberties and freedoms that we have. I'm not a veteran, but I come from a family. Father who was in the Army, served a couple of tours over in Asia, and a family that dates back in Pennsylvania to the American Revolution, that fought in all the wars. So it's something that with great pride, with uncles, that Army, Air Force, these are things that promises made. And it shouldn't be that the veterans have to jump over high bars. The default ought to be that they should get things to make their life better as they come back to the civilian world, and as they get older, that they get the appropriate medical attention that they need to do. And I'm constantly told by veterans that, again, it makes no sense that they have to travel an hour and a half for a 10-minute blood test, where they could go to the private sector and it gets done on a less expensive basis. There are some things where, yes, it's important for them to go to the VA hospital, but there should be a little bit more flexibility, again, common sense-wise, in terms of what the veterans are able to do. I mean, the veterans that are watching the show know that I'm going to fight for you. I mean, because it's something that is unbelievably important to me, for what you've done to this for this country in terms of protecting our freedoms.
We're coming down to the end of the show, and I want to give you the opportunity to talk to the constituents of the 8th District, to reach them. What is your message to them? What do you want them to know about you, and why should they go out on November 6th and vote for John Chrin?
Oh, Gary, thank you. And for the viewers today, you've heard my background. I'm a self-made, working class kid that had a chance to go through and do well in life. And I've come back home to Pennsylvania to make this area better from a prosperity perspective, to use the tools and experience that I've gained in life. And I tell people that when you look, if you think higher taxes and more burdensome regulations which kill jobs, unaffordable high-cost health care, and sanctuary cities are what you're in favor of, you're going to want to vote for my opponent and not me. If you think Nancy Pelosi reflects your northeastern Pennsylvanian values, again, you're not going to want to vote for me. You're going to want to vote for Matt Cartwright, because that's who he supports and the values that he votes in Washington. I think northeastern Pennsylvania can do better, deserves better, and I'm going to go to Washington to fight to represent those values and build and bring prosperity to this area, which I know we can have. But you have to have somebody with the business sense and common sense and a good heart to go down there and fight for you. And that's what I'm going to do.
All right, John, we got 2 minutes remaining in the show. Somebody wants to learn more information about you, wants to read about your campaign and what everything we've talked about. Where's the best place for them to go?
Sure. Best place for them to go is www.johnchrin.com. And that's C-H-R-I-N. It is a little difficult. Chrin is not the easiest name to pronounce, but it's a Ukrainian name.
Let's see. All right. I would have known that. I would have asked you that later on, where it came from. Again, Election Day, November 6th. Everyone, it's very, very important to go out and make sure you exercise your right to vote, no matter who you vote for. But go out and vote and make sure that that person you're voting for represents your views, and you want them to represent you in Washington. John, again, thank you for coming on. And is there anything else you want the voters to know about John Chrin?
That I'm going to do what I've done my entire life. I'm going to work hard for you. I'm going to do it with integrity. And I humbly ask for your vote and support on November 6th. Thank you.
All right. John, thank you so much for coming on and giving everyone the opportunity here in our viewing area to know you and to know what you stand for. And if you want to learn more about John, his website's been up on the screen, johnchrin.com, where you can get all the information, learn about him, and maybe even go out and talk with you at upcoming events. Everything's on there as well to learn more. And again, it is so important for you to go out and vote on November 6th. Thank you so much for joining us here on Topic A, everyone. We'll see you next time here on WYLN TV.
I'm John Chrin, and I approve this message.